time for the AFC West and the Broncos. Win total 8.5. Under, -150. Good team to talk about. I like them this year. Last year, everything went wrong. They still went 9-7 straight up. 9-7 ATS, 9-7 to the under. A 6-2 start. Then all the injuries hit, especially to the O-line. A 3-5 finish. And the mainstream stats, 22 takeaways, 25 giveaways. The offense stunk because Siemian got banged up. They couldn't run the ball. The offensive line was beat up, and they lost C.J. Anderson as well. 5.1 yards per play, not good. 3.6 yards per rush was 29th. 6.9 yards per pass attempt, slightly below average, and 40 sacks allowed. No good either, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the 9-7 record last year, and I mean, they only had 2 wins against teams versus winning records. They beat Houston, a team with no quarterback, and then in Week 17 they beat Oakland with Matt McCoy, and then McCoy got hurt and Connor Cook came in, and it wasn't pretty for the Raiders once Carr got hurt. So that was their only 2 wins against teams with winning record. They beat some big names early, teams like Carolina, Cincinnati, but a lot of those squads, basically all of those squads that they beat, ended up having relatively disappointing seasons. Now, you talk about some of those mainstream stats. Look, the takeaways, they were top quartile defensively in takeaways, but below average in giveaways, and they were bottom quartile in yards per play. They were number 29 in yards per rush. They were below average in yards per pass attempt, and they were below average in sacks allowed. So certainly on the offense side of the football, going into the offseason, this is a squad that said, we have a lot of work to do. And when you're talking about a couple of quarterbacks in Siemian and Lynch, who were pressured more than 31% of the time on their dropbacks last year. That was, again, bottom quartile. And the rushing attack, number 30 in rushing DVOA. Number one thing when you have those type of issues, work on the offensive line. And they had a complete offensive line overhaul this past offseason.
All right, I think they did a good job there. We'll see if it translates on the field. Vance Joseph, the new coach. Here's Joseph on the quarterbacks. He was DC at Miami. But he said it's going to be one on the football field. It's going to be one in the games in the preseason. That's where evaluation starts, in my opinion, end quote. I'd be stunned if Siemian doesn't win the job. I'll tell you what's cause for concern, Teddy, because he's a first-round pick. When he got in there, Lynch looked completely lost.
Sure, but I mean, we've seen plenty of rookie quarterbacks look lost, especially when they're playing behind weak offensive lines. And look, Pro Football Focus had them ranked right now as a number 25 offensive line going into the season. I think that may well be a little bit low. They signed Ronald Leary, who was basically the Cowboys' 6th guard, or 6th offensive lineman, and only 5 guys can start. They signed Leary from Dallas, and it was the same story with Oakland, with Menelik Watson, a guy who's had a ton of injuries in his career, but has a lot of talent, has the potential to be an impact player. They already have a Pro Bowl center in Matt Paradas. So, the problem that they've had on the offensive line, they've been going with the likes of Donald Stevenson, who was awful last year, and Ty Sambrello, who was a high draft choice. Michael Schofield was a high draft choice. Those guys haven't really panned out. If they don't have Stevenson, Sambrello, and Schofield see the field or be anywhere near the projected starter, that's a big bonus for the offensive line. And, of course, when you look at the draft, Garrett Bowles, the tackle out of Utah, as the number 1 pick. And then a couple of weapons in Carlos Henderson, Jake Butt, guys for the young quarterbacks to find, and a couple of defenders. Certainly DeMarcus Walker, the defensive end from Florida State, is someone who has the potential to come in and give them something what they're going to be losing with the DeMarcus Ware's retirement.
Look who's back as the OC, Mike McCoy. What do you think of that move?
Yeah, well, he got fired by the Chargers. This is actually his 5th season overall as the Broncos offense coordinator. He's had 4 different starting quarterbacks during that span. But when you're talking about Vance Joseph, and it's a first-year head coach for Denver, he's only had 1 year of coordinating experience. As DC in Miami last year. Prior to that, he was a position coach. So the talk on Vance Joseph is that he relates very well to the players. When it comes to the experience running a franchise, I don't think it hurts to have a guy like Mike McCoy as the offensive coordinator, as long as the two of them get along. But it's not just an offense coordinator and a head coach change, a defense coordinator change as well.
Yes, Joe Woods is now the new DC. Last year, 4.7 yards per play allowed, number 1. 69.7 opposing QB rating, number 1, 42 sacks, 3rd, 4.3 yards per rush allowed. But I'll tell you, when you look at the DVOA and some of the other numbers, with all the talent they had, they stunk against the run.
Well, I mean, look, they led the league in DVOA by a huge margin at opposing yards per attempt, per pass attempt. So if they're mediocre against the run, so be it. They pick up a guy like Peko from Cincinnati, who's been a 10-year starter for the Bengals and an anchor potentially on the interior of that defensive line if he can stay healthy. It's certainly not a defense that say, all right, they can't stop the run, Denver's in trouble, but a defense that's been, excuse me, nothing short of extraordinary. They carried them a Super Bowl title 2 years ago. All the defense. Last year, the defense by far the best in the NFL against the pass, and incredible numbers by and large throughout the course of the campaign. You say, can they match those numbers for a third season in a row with a new coordinator and the loss of someone like Ware? You have to expect at least some drop-off from this defense. Don't know if it's going to be a huge drop-off, but I don't know that Denver's defense is going to be quite as good as it has been. Again, they lost a number of big names in free agency.
All right, so we're just starting with this division, obviously. The Raiders are good with a lot of talent, but every close game and every break went their way last year. We'll see if that continues. Chargers already get bad news with Mike Williams, and I don't think there's going to be much of a home field advantage in L.A. No one's excited that the Chargers are now in Los Angeles. I think the Chiefs, that was smoke and mirrors last year. They went 12-4 and didn't do a damn thing to improve their team. I like the Broncos. I mean, a lot of things went wrong, and they still won 9 games last year. But the schedule, I mean, how about, look at this, Teddy. They have, Sunday, October 22nd, they're in L.A. to take on the Chargers. Then they play at Kansas City, another road game on Monday night. Then, on a short week and an early start, they go to Philly. Then they come home on a Sunday night and they get the Patriots.
Yeah, exactly. And then after that, they still have a back-to-back road trip, at Oakland, and then a long trip east for an early start game at Miami. So it is a real tough stretch, although it's worth noting that game we were talking about on Sunday the 22nd, that's week 7 at the Chargers. That's only their second road game of the season. They have the opportunity, to get off to a pretty good start playing all these games in Denver, but not easy games. Dallas, Oakland, the Giants, all of whom are expected to be pretty good this season for the Broncos. Their schedule last year was brutal, really was brutal. This year is still tougher than average, but there is a drop-off compared to last year for where Denver was in 2016. It's an easier schedule than it was last year, but again, still tougher than average. Well, we'll get to it one day at a time, my friend. But Denver, not a team I'm likely to make a bet on their season win total. My first lean was under. The more I looked at them, the less inclined I was to betting them under. So they're probably a team I'm going to pass.
Hey guys, for the full video, go to sbrpicks.com.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to our channel. Now, we've put a lot of work into producing all these free videos, so please help us out and keep all our content free for you forever by simply liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Now, not to mention, a visit to our industry-leading website will warm the hearts of all our SBR employees, especially myself. Now, the links are over there to the left, so do check those out. Thanks for watching.